All right. So, what are we going to do today, Teodora?
I guess we're going to talk about my recent fire casino retreat.
That sounds awesome. Okay, yeah. So, basically we're going to do this yeah, I'm going to be asking Teodora some questions about her fire casino retreat that she did recently and kind of mostly just from a place of my own curiosity and what her interest in what she thinks was valuable and relevant about the retreat. And we'll just see how that goes. So,
All right.
yeah. So maybe first, just want to say maybe a few words about like, yeah, maybe what you were thinking going into the retreat and how it went for you and these kinds of things. Maybe give us some context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know how important this was, but I guess it's important to mention. So I was supposed to go and do this retreat in New Zealand with Roger and some other people. So we recorded another video with Roger that's already on the channel. And something happened with my visa, which was not even processed, and I couldn't go. So I ended up staying in at home and doing a solo retreat. And I did 11 days, and this time I had to stop partially because I didn't want to go beyond the New Year's Eve. I wanted to go to the mountains, but I had to stop early because of the flu. So I got the flu and I became so sick that I couldn't meditate anymore. So it ended up being 11 days. And yeah, I did it over the holidays. I had contact with the people from New Zealand almost every day, and some days twice a day. So there was a 12-hour difference. I'm in Europe. Um, and we would meet at their night, my morning. So they were doing like an evening sit together. And before that they had like no, yeah, when they were doing no. Right. So they were doing their morning practice, like yoga or something like that, together. And I would sometimes join for that in my evenings. Um, or we had dinners scheduled together. So their dinner, my early morning. And then sometimes after that, they would have an evening set that I would sometimes join in the morning. But there were also days when I was totally alone. And it was also a very quiet time because we had the holidays here. And for example, my building was completely empty. There was nobody. So there was really this strong feeling of complete solitude. Even when I went for a walk, I would barely meet anybody. And yeah, so it was a very interesting atmosphere around the retreat. Yeah, and yeah, so I'm mostly I remember at the beginning I had intended to do many hours a day. But then
Mhm.
I had just moved into this apartment, and yeah, there were many things that because I was just planning to move in, drop my things in here, just place some basics in their in their place, just my mattress on the floor so that I could sleep for a couple of nights before I fly off to New Zealand. So I didn't really I didn't really even try to set up the place for living. So then when the retreat started, I also had to find things, because the house was really not functional. So that really took away some hours that I would otherwise spend meditating. But in the end, I think I was quite happy with the dose. Um, Also, not having this constant high dose really made me learn more about the effects of the fire practice, like candle practice itself. Yeah, maybe we can talk about that a bit more later. And yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
I'd
know
love to.
what else should I
Mm.
say about the context. Yeah, I think you asked also about the intention, or like
Yeah, what you're
the
hoping to get
intention that
out of
I
it. Yeah.
yeah. So this time I wanted to work on my feminine qualities, and I wanted to focus on femininity in general, especially since in the previous few retreats I worked with a few female archetypes, um, and that just kind of in some ways happened spontaneously, and it was quite rewarding. Um, and so this time I wanted to focus only on that aspect. So I wanted to generally focus on my femininity and like generally kind of feminine archetypes. And that was the intention that I got entering the retreat. It was also kind of important for me psychologically, and that was just the framework or the intention with which I entered the retreat. And I didn't really have like a solid approach or a very structured approach for how to actually address that during the retreat.
Hmm.
But this is something that I appreciate about Fire Kasina, is that these intentions usually play out through somehow the wisdom of the practice. Like you don't really know, yeah, you don't really need to know how your intention would manifest. You just kind of need to have faith and do the practice, and then it just develops in its own way, and it is the right way. I really experienced that over and over again, and so this time I didn't even try to prepare for how this should manifest. I was just ready to approach the retreat and see how it evolves.
Yeah, I like how you said that. It's sort of like you set the intention and then you sort of trust that the practice will take care of that in the right ways for you and in a sense. Hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious, and maybe we'll just get into this as it applies to this particular retreat, but when you talk about working with archetypes or working with the feminine archetypes, I think the first thing I wondered was even just kind of like what do you understand that to be? Like what is working with um an archetype? But maybe you can just talk about it in terms of anything that happened for you on this retreat or say something now. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this goes into the realm of, I think, what is termed as entities in the Fire Casino glossary.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure. I don't think that this happens for everybody, but it happens quite commonly on Fire Casino retreats that um so even without giving them names, like even without recognizing them as um, a recognized being within any cultural framework, what will happen in Fire Casino is that humanoid or anthropomorphic um, things, I will just say things, will appear. Like they can be a feeling of a presence, that you have a feeling of part of another kind of consciousness is present
Hmm.
with you. Like this feeling when you have when somebody's watching you,
Hmm.
like that kind of feeling of, or you know that somebody's thinking of you, or like when you know that your mom must be thinking about you in this moment and she must be wondering where you are. So you have this like presence of your mom's mind, you like there is a
Nice. Hmm.
compartment inside of your awareness that somehow feels like somebody else's mind. Like you can model that easily in everyday interactions. And so that is quite common in Fire Kasina, and it can also manifest as voice. It can so faces can show up on the visual screen, and I think it's also up to the meditator if they want to confirm them as something other than you, or something with agency or with some form of independent ability or ability to independently function and interact with you. So I think that's a track that one can choose to follow or not. And I think that some people are naturally kind of predisposed to choose one or the other. I think that some people like to deconstruct things as illusions, or just appearances or funny things that our mind does. And there are some people who are more prone to, you could call it, you could say, buying into these consciousnesses, or buying into these agents, or choosing to reify their existence as something other than yourself, or to, even if you believe that your mind is producing them, that it's your mind, that it's like your psyche just producing another bubble of psyche that does something. I think you can also choose to believe that for this experience, for this time being, for the duration of this retreat, or for this layer of my experience, I'm going to accept that that is a separate thing that can have an effect on this other part that is not it, or that it's something novel, or something that is kind of infusing into what is perceived as my psyche. And so, for
Yeah.
example, when, I mean, this is also like technical bit of advice for doing Fire Casino. Like, if you have a face appearing on the visual screen, you can slowly start building a narrative or an attitude towards that face as being, oh, something that's visiting you. And you can, if it doesn't appear with affect, or like with certain emotional quality, or aversion, or attraction, you can choose whether you want to make it a kind, benevolent, generous entity. And so when the space appears, it can be like, oh, somebody's here to give me gifts of wisdom, And slowly, this is something that I like about Fire Casino, is because this kind of reification, this kind of confirmation can take you very far. Like, same thing when you're doing, if you want to produce shapes, the more shapes you produce, and the more you, even at the beginning when they're very, very, very vague, if you just see a faint glimpse, if you want to intend like for a square, and if you notice a faintest glimpse, or if you see a square in your thoughts, but you're not sure whether you saw it in your field of vision, and you want to see it there, you're like, oh, I think I actually saw it, It's just like, yeah, you're just kind of creating a bias almost for yourself that ends up becoming true. Eventually, you will be able to see whatever you are confirming to yourself, like whatever you are supporting. I mean, I think this also gives a very direct insight into how our perception works, like how prone we are to these biases, and how they end up shaping what we end up perceiving as our reality. And that a lot of our reality are these shared biases that are produced through social agreements, or some kind of evolutionary agreements, or But this is one thing that I appreciate about Fire Casino, is that it gives you a direct insight into how constructed your reality actually is.
Yeah, I really actually like that because it's something like if these things are always at play, but normally we're kind of grounding ourselves in different ways through the senses, then
Mm-hmm.
there's something interesting about it's like, okay, if you really want to know how much of experience can sort of be sculpted by the mind, like just notice how much of that's happening in isolation. And then you can
Mm-hmm.
understand something about how that interacts with um, maybe the aspects where it's happening less. But the way you get that comparison is by kind of seeing, oh, yeah, like, that face looks slightly like um, it's the horse of a face, and then suddenly, oh no, or the horse of a face, the face of a horse,
Face of the
and then
horse. Yeah, yeah,
suddenly it is the
exactly.
face of the horse
Yeah.
after you've had that thought, and so that's and yeah, I liked it because I hadn't thought of that taken to the extreme of kind of as you said it. It's almost like kind of like bootstrapping your own entities, or like you're
Mm-hmm.
sort of like encouraging them out of the clay of your mind and to come into
Mm-hmm.
being. But it's yeah, it's quite cool.
Yeah. 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 And so also while doing this, you're creating a world for yourself where it's possible to be contacted by entities. And where this becomes useful, or at least where it was useful for me, when you then encounter, let's say, frameworks, cultural or spiritual frameworks, where that is a track of work, you can then bridge those two, and you can say, okay, I find these and these and these Tibetan entities useful. Since I know how to recognize the presence of an entity in my psyche, I'm going to try and open myself up to the experience of this particular entity and see what happens. And then the first time you get a glimpse of like for me, it often comes like as a knock knock, you know, you're just like sitting, meditating. There's like raptures, vibes going through the body, going through the head, there's shimmering on the eyes. I don't know, I would be doing jhanas, just vibing, I would just like tickle my body inside out, whatever, just sitting, enjoying the practice. And then there would be this like, just like an energetic, like you could feel it like a wave of piti or something that would feel like knock knock. And the first time it happened, I remember this was this was happening on my very, very, very first retreat as well. But I remember the first fire Kasina retreat, there was just like this flames of fire. And I think I already shared this in one of the interviews. And there was this kind of fire goddess that appeared and spoke to me and said that she could offer me all the powers and, greatness if only I would let her possess me. Did not do. Another thing with entities, and Roger and I also discussed this, is that there is no trade involved with the nice entities. The nice entities only want you to get enlightened. Like the nice entities only want you to heal. They don't want anything from you.
So this is how say, say more, say more.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there would be like entities that would come. They would manifest sometimes as voices, as faces. You could experience these things. And sometimes you would feel into this interaction. Sometimes it would be like an interaction. It's a bit like it's a bit like having a dream. I mean, a lot of fire casino experiences are comparable to dreams.
Mm.
And you and you would have this character in a dream, and they would interact with you, and very often they interact with you in a way that's somehow known to you. They interact with your tapestry. They don't just say random things. So it's very, in my experience, it's very easy to establish a common ground, like to establish in which aspect of your psyche this character is working in. So, okay, this one was offering powers. And it's like you can understand very quickly what they're about. This is also what I like about this domain of work, is that very quickly they link into your associations very fast, and you can know whether they are there for I don't know, just giving random examples like energy work, powers, awakening, psychology, like what aspect of your practice or your interests they might relate to. And and then you can choose. You can like feel into the proposition, into what they're offering, and then you can choose. And this is where boundaries are very important, because if you do not want to allow this exchange, then you just say no. And you also like really need to be firm on that, not firm in an aggressive way, but just kind of know that in your entire being, this entity is not allowed in. Like this character that showed up, that has a proposal that your mind create or did not create. Like we're not really talking about ontologies here. We're talking about something that simply can happen on this kind of retreat. You can choose whether you want to interact or not. And for me, working with archetypes has been, it's hard to say what was the most rewarding on the spiritual path, but I definitely got a lot out of working with archetypes. Like there was this tantric deity that I encountered through a book, and that I worked with for some time on and off retreat, and it really transformed my psyche. It really transformed my confidence. It transformed the way I was in the world, not only as a woman, but also as a woman. I remember like the feeling of being present in the meditative dev room was slightly, of me being present in the meditative.dev room was slightly different. My presence at work, just like my way of being in the world was transformed through that experience. And what I like about archetypes is that, or entities, or however you want to call them, is that they work with your whole being. So you can have this character, and because they are in your psyche, and your psyche interacts with everything. It interacts with your nervous system, with your flesh, with your immune system. Like it's connected to everything. So an archetypal influence will have the capability of having an effect on any aspect of you, which can be extremely powerful if it goes well, but you can also immediately see that it can be extremely dysregulating if it does not go well. And this is also where boundaries are really important, because it's very important to know in which framework of reality this interaction is happening. That this is not a character that can talk into your ears and tell you what to tell to another person in a business meeting. That this is not a voice in your head that can control you in malicious or dysfunctional ways. I mean, this is a very slippery slope for becoming completely insane. And so it's really important to have these frameworks of not giving them full independence, like not giving them full reality, to know that this is a useful construct of your mind, and to know what it is functional for, and to know what it is not functional for. But for
Yeah,
things that they are functional for, they can be extremely beneficial. So they can show you, like, when you allow this piece, this bubble, this of your mind, or this character, to work through you, they can literally teach you how to be through your own body. So if you're sad, they can just convert you into a completely integrally all consuming happiness. They can just literally convert every bit of your being into another way of being. And this is, I don't know, this is a fantastic way to learn, because it's completely embodied, because your mind and your body are just being that. You're not reading from a book. You're not hearing and trying to mirror another person how it is. You're just being that, by allowing this one part of your mind to act without your will, without your knowing, without your awareness of what its intentions are, assuming that they're good intentions, and you've already established that, that they're working in a benevolent way, but like without knowing what they would do exactly. So just surrendering control, incredible things can happen. Incredible learning can happen.
yeah, it's really, really cool. Um, Maybe I just want to actually ask, sort of to clarify a bit, just mostly to see if I kind of am tracking somewhat what you're saying there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so if we take it that whatever shows up in our experience is somehow already alive, in a sense, archetypally inside of us. Um, and so, because of that, it's both very powerful and can be dangerous, because it's not something that's actually, in some sense, external and disconnected. It's something that is plugged into some deep aspect of who we are. Um, then, because of that, uh, yeah, we want to be careful about what kind of entities or archetypes we lean into, because they have like this kind of strong power to transform us in whatever the ways, I guess, associated with those archetypes are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, I think this is something that yeah, I mean, clearly, like the Jungian
Hmm.
approach to psychology was using, but also something that is quite a strong component of the Tibetan traditions,
Hmm.
or tantric traditions. Um, but I mean, I think this is also part of many cultures. I think in Christianity, we also can see that some saints or some figures can also be used as archetypes. So when people pray to Mary, they can also feel into what they're praying for, versus when they're praying to um yeah, maybe Jesus, or maybe like a different kind of loving presence. With Mary, I guess it's typically soft and caring, and I don't know. I didn't spend much time praying to Mary, so I don't want to I don't want to spoil this for anybody, or come across as offensive. But what I'm trying to convey is that we can model these different personas, and we can also feel more than just a mental image. They can have an impression in our bodies. Their way of being, their presence can have an impression inside of our bodies. And so I think this is something that's used quite a lot throughout different traditions. And then it's quite useful, for example, because in those traditions, for example, in Tibet, in Tibetan Buddhism, they've described these different archetypes. So you can have, for example, the medicine Buddha is benevolent and kind and healing, and never gets wrathful. And this, it's usually why it's one of the first empowerments that most people get. But then you have other deities that react wrathfully to anger. So they will, through that approach, they would teach you how to contain your anger, because every time there is anger present, they would have I don't know, a wrathful reaction. And how this happens, for example, so I was working with this feminine archetype that was that had a lot of self-respect and pride, and was kind of holding itself very skillfully in high regard, kind of like partially a queen archetype, but also a lot of possessing like a lot of internal power, which I feel I do possess. I don't come across as a grandiose person, but we'll leave that for others to judge. But then what was great was that I was carrying this energy, this way of being, and so throughout the whole day, I would just be feeling that and acting in a way that stems from that. And then if I would be doing something that's not aligned with that way of being, I would get like a buzz. I would get like a warning, like, oh, this is not, it would be very clearly felt in the body that this is going away from the principles of that archetype. And I don't know how many therapy sessions or how many painful life lessons you would need to get to access that type of learning. Like it was incredibly fast and incredibly direct, that I just even now know what it is like to have that unbreakable self-respect, to know where my boundaries are, to know that for respecting my boundaries, I'm not respecting other people's boundaries, that I should not give in to what other people are asking me to do just so that I could please them or whatever, that my integrity is my integrity, and that with that integrity, I'm also a kind, loving person, and that giving into other people's demands, whatever they are, whether they're explicit or not, is not something that I should do, not because I'm not a kind person or not a cooperative person, but because I'm betraying myself. And so learning that through this very intense embodied example, it's like really an example. I don't think, I cannot imagine how I could have learned this otherwise, except through making enough mistakes to hopefully learn from them. And I was tremendously grateful for it. I was really tremendously grateful for it.
Yeah, yeah, I like how you said that. And I think it's interesting because there's like aspects of what you said that people might interpret just as a kind of conceptual self-talk or something like that, which I think is definitely not what you're saying. And I like how you brought it back to the embodied aspect because it's yeah, I guess I just want to like highlight a kind of distinction there that is maybe we can maybe gloss over if we're not careful just when listening.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the nuances of that experience,
Mm.
I did not even have in my conscious awareness. So this is really, you could even see it as an example of your higher self manifesting in your conscious awareness, or like your
Mm.
subconscious and the parts of your subconscious that know what you need, that really know what is the best version of yourself. But then in my own self-talk, I would not be able to call that up. You know, when I do self-talk in my ordinary like daily life,
Mm.
these things don't come up quite like that. I would need to have an external situation that would somehow lead me through a conclusion, either by seeing a really good example of that. But you know, if I don't have that principle, if I don't have that pattern in my conscious awareness, I wouldn't even be able to recognize how another person is behaving when they're fully respecting themselves, when they're fully loyal to their own integrity. I wouldn't even be able to recognize that because for the old version of me, it was okay to give in every now and then to maintain peace, you know? It was okay
Mm.
to create harmony by betraying a part of yourself to please another person. So for me, this was an acceptable way of being until I learned that it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's nice how you sort of like pulled those apart.
And the intensity with which it appears in the body is not an intensity that my self-talk could ever produce on its own.
Mm.
Like I would need to. It feels like it feels like your whole body is just charged, like you're plugged in, like the strongest blissful PT that you could ever produce, and it's there for hours and hours and hours and just changing. Like it's your body sensations amplified so much that whatever fluctuation happens, you can notice it. And so you can get
Mm.
these impulses of good, not good, appropriate, not appropriate. This is in accordance with this. This is not in accordance with this. This is in accord. If you do this exactly in this and this and this and this way, that will be the way you're loyal to yourself. You know, it's like it's very nuanced because it's so amplified. You can see all these nuances, and it's priceless. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's really cool listening to how you describe it. Um, I guess maybe I'll just give us the opportunity if we want to go, because I realize we haven't necessarily talked that much about your actual retreat yet. So we've done a deep
I
dive
mean,
into
this,
archetypal transformation, which maybe
yeah,
I'm sure is connected. Um,
yeah. No, this was the highlight of my retreat. This was the
oh,
absolute.
amazing.
I mean, this
Okay.
this was the
That's where
main.
the passion's
This was
coming
the
from in part.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. This was absolutely the main experience, or like the main trajectory in
Really
the
cool.
retreat. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, do you maybe then want to say, kind of zooming out a bit again, kind of the arc of this retreat for you, kind of how it progressed and how it evolved as you went along?
Um, I think One thing I would notice about this retreat, and it really gave me a perspective on all the previous retreats, um, mostly because I did not have such strong visuals in the sense that I did not have too many things manifesting on my visual screen. I mean,
Mhm.
the like on the backs of my eyelids, on the back of my eyelids. Some, and they did, I mean, there were some, and they did get more detailed throughout the retreat, but that was really not the focus. And so this retreat, or the experiences on this retreat, happen more. I'm not really sure what to call this space. Maybe you would have a word for it, but one way of describing it would be in the mind's eye, but that could also happen with eyes open. So I think the mind's eye is typically something that people perceive inside. But so the ability to perceive, I think energy would be one word that people call it, but I think I don't think it's doing it justice. You know, when you can, the way you perceive your thoughts, they can also manifest in the space around. And maybe, yeah, maybe this thinking sense is that, but it's also so much more dense and much more layered and much more intensified. It becomes much more rich, and it can also interact with your body and emotions and like with your entire being. But I would see things or perceive things in my thoughts that were extremely rich, or I could perceive parts of my psyche in extremely almost palpable, like not palpable in the sense that I could like really see them in space, you know, but like layers of my psychology, layers of my personality. Like I had these non-dual experiences where everything would be this one aspect of my femininity, air around me, like my everything is just like the grid of reality, the grid of my experience is that. um and then just and then when I kind of stretch it on a canvas of reality, then I could just like tell all the details of it, and because it builds such strong concentration, then you can just maintain these images of whatever you want to examine, and then you can just like analyze, you know, how what this layer of your personality is like, how it integrates with others, you know, just like you can really analyze it to such fine details, its history and genesis, how it interacts with your friends, your romantic partners, your work, you know, it's just like it was really 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 incredible. Or for example, working with this particular feminine entity or archetype that I mentioned, like there was this presence of the color of gold that was all pervasive. Like at some point, I had a feeling that my whole body was gold, that my breath was gold, that the air around me was gold. And this was also emphasized by the glow of the candle, that the whole house was gold, that everything, the whole world, like exactly the fabric of reality was made of this glowing gold material. And it really like manifested through all the layers of my perception. And it was somehow yeah, I think these experiences were really beautiful. That there were these moments where where somehow everything would be that, and it really unlocked this awareness of perception as not something visual or tactile, or but like this thought space of perception that can actually manifest as anything because it's abstract, but then making it so vibrant. Yeah. And like the reason why I emphasize that so much is because it gave me a different perspective on the progress of the retreat, because I noticed that, for example, in the phase that's called the murk, this is all that there is. But this is not meditation. This is not unpleasant. It's just that your perception opens up to this abstract realm, and it's not something that you are so immersed in your regular daily perception, because it's not very functional for interacting with solid objects and crossing the street and going to work. And you're just like, you really need to be in the material reality. And so when you break through into like when you break through the impermanence of what you perceive as solid physical reality, you break into this. And at first it's disorienting because you're like, what is this? Where am I? Nothing works here, Then I cannot feel anything, I don't see anything. It's completely disorienting. But when you know what it is, that you're actually kind of penetrating into the non-physical perception, then I think that gives it a better framework of finding what is there, and what
Mm.
the fabric of non-material perception is like. And that, like, really, I mean, I think this is something that I implicitly or unconsciously knew before, but now it really got frameworks. I could really perceive it for what it is, and find ways to be in it. Like I never really suffered from the murk.
Mm.
Like I think I had sufficient frameworks to just go through that stage, but now I would actually never use the word murk anymore. I would actually change that part of the terminology. So yeah, this is something I'm also really grateful for when it comes to this retreat, that it made that so obvious.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I guess just to clarify, you mean something like normally people go through the murk and you can't really perceive much, and you're sort of trying to make out any kind of visual thing you might possibly notice. And I guess, like, I kind of understand what you're saying is that a lot of the actual useful action in the murk might not even be in the visual domain in a certain sense. It's not actually on the screen. And so
I mean,
that's
this
quite
is
like a
something that we
different.
already know, but it's usually that people see this as like a price you have to pay, as a
Yep, yep.
compromise you have to make to sit through this boring part of the retreat until you get to the good stuff. When
Yeah, yeah, you
actually
suffer
this
through the
boring
murk.
part of the retreat is the good stuff. Is the really, really, really good stuff, if it can be pointed out.
I like it. We're rebranding the murk.
Yeah,
It's got a
yeah,
bad
yeah,
rap.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd probably benefit from that myself. actually, and I think about it. Hmm. Um, yeah, I guess maybe where would you like to go from here? What are the other kind of aspects of this retreat for you that you felt were like particularly salient and worth kind of yeah, saying something about?
Um, Shawn, it's 9:30.
Hmm.
Do you want to find a way to wrap up, or should I open up a new box? I mean, we'll have to cut this part, but I think since you said, I mean, I don't have a hard boundary, but you said that
Yeah,
you did.
that's true. And then I was just in the flow. I was just flowing through the
Yeah, yeah,
recommended
yeah,
work.
yeah. I've also been thinking that we actually started a really amazing conversation, and that maybe we should then have a part two or something like that. But
Yeah, there's all sorts of places that could be.
yeah,
It'd be cool to like, I don't know whether I actually have the time for it right now, but it'd be cool to like take conversations like this and kind of listen back to them, even maybe together in some kind of way, and like take a note of all of the branching off points that we're reminded of. That, I mean, a number of them happened to me while you were speaking, and it's just like, of course, we can't
mm-hmm.
go everywhere all at once or it becomes too much. But yeah, it would be kind of cool to do the like take all of the branch points and just like make those then into a sort of like secondary exploration or something like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Um, that doesn't answer what to do now.
I
I
could maybe,
guess,
if you have
yeah.
10 minutes, we could try to wrap it up in 10 minutes, and I can maybe
Sure.
say
Yeah.
also something like, yeah, I think I spoke about the main aspects of this retreat for me, and that I could mention a few more things, and then we can like kind of close it off there.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I think you can just, I assume we can just cut it from my question and then
Mm-hmm.
you going into answering that question or something like
Can
that.
you
Does
just
that work?
quickly? Yeah, yeah. So the question was, are there any other interesting?
Yeah, like other, now I have to remember. Yeah, like other like aspects or of the retreat that you wanted to bring up or sort of point out
Mm-hmm.
or draw out or yeah, that were, I mean, this is adding, but that were like kind of like very alive for you that you haven't hit on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Um, now I have to get back into the vibe of the previous conversation.
I'm
Mm,
excited to hear what you're going to say.
yeah. Um, yeah. So actually, what was really present on this retreat were these general observations about fire casino as practice, and I had spent a lot of time on this retreat making notes and making scripts for the videos that I want to do for the channel. And one really kind of strong conclusion was this: what I just said about the Merc not really being the Merc, but being like a purification and a transformation stage rather than just something that you need to wait out. Which is, I also have to be kind of giving credit to Daniel. This is also something that Daniel says in the retreats, that he would say the Merc is where the party's at. And if you also listen to some of his videos, he would also say that the Merc is not something to avoid, but rather something to immerse yourself in. But I think just because of the word, it has a negative connotation. But generally, like, I think that partially the unpleasantness of the Merc comes from when your filters that you need to function in the physical environment, a physical social environment, when they are removed, then also all the things that you are suppressing come up. So if you're suppressing frustration, or if you're suppressing like things that you can normally keep under a certain threshold, they just start bubbling up, and you notice them so much more in contrast to your suppressed state. So typically we're not suppressing joy. I mean, I think there are people who suppress in general, but I think that it's quite common that people suppress unpleasant emotions and they allow the pleasant emotions to be there, and that's their true self. Or like, okay, I'm not going to use the word the true self, because it's it has different interpretation, but like that's the real them, and this unpleasant stuff, that's not them. And so now, and I think this is just kind of a part of normal functioning. I'm not trying to pathologize this or anything, but like when this filter is removed, then bloop, all of these unpleasant things that are also sometimes good to suppress, they just like pop up, and then you have to learn how to be with them. But I think also this is what I like, for example, about the ayahuasca container, that there's this purging stage where you purge the toxic way of being from your system. So you're kind of, you know that you're purifying yourself. And I think that this makes it a lot easier for people to surrender to it, because you know that even though it's a little bit painful, it is also really good for you.
Yeah.
And so I think this is what I had in mind when I also call the Merg the purification stage, because you suddenly see all of these things that you're suppressing, and you have nothing else to do but to deal with it, because as long as you're meditating, it's going to stay in the open. and eventually it neutralizes. Like eventually it levels out. So you're not too excited, but you're not too frustrated either. Like eventually it balances out. And the other aspect is this transformation of where your perception is, like this opening up of the perception below the filters, that can become extremely rich. And sometimes, like, to bring back to what we talked about at the beginning, is that whatever aspects of this part of whatever part of your perception you support or reify will grow. So if you, for whatever reason, choose to, and so you can always choose it. Like, I think this is also where your subconscious has needs that need to be play out. Like once it gets the stage that it normally doesn't get, it will want to take the stage. And this is where intentions are really important, and trying to have an intention that is really true to your actual needs. Like for me, encountering my femininity and being with my femininity was really something that I needed at this moment. So it was really resonant. And so it manifested. But you can go into a retreat and be like, oh, I want flashy images. But your psyche actually needs healing from a painful event or a burnout or something like that. And that's what
Mm.
it's going to do. Like as soon as it gets that stage, that's what it's going to do. And so you should actually surrender to that, because trying to force it in any other way will result in friction and frustration, and you will not do either. Like it will not let you do the thing that you wanted to do, and you will
Hmm.
not let it do the thing that it needs to do that will ultimately help you. Like this is what you actually need. You're just not allowing it to be there. And so, yeah, these were like
Yeah.
really big learnings from this retreat, that I could see all of these, like this kind of dynamics very obviously, very clearly laid out. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super interesting. I feel like one of the main themes of this particular conversation is something the like the therapeutic benefits of fire casina or something like that. Um, and it's kind of cool because some of it also sounds kind of similar to how one might therapeutically use psychedelics or other things. There's this kind of like you have to let, with psychedelics, it'd be like you have to let the drug show you where the sort of work needs to be done. Like you don't um, go in with some set agenda because that's just going to lead to you having a bad trip. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I was sort of reminded of that. And there's also just something beautiful about giving some part of yourself the opportunity to like show up and somehow get the attention it deserves. Like there's that it's been denied for like whatever reasons about our causes and conditions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think this is also something that people might perceive as magic. Um, with a like and I think they'd be right in some ways. It's really profoundly beautiful.
Wow. Amazing. Um, yeah, maybe we'll draw things to a close here. This feels like a good
Yeah,
moment.
I think this came together quite nicely. I wouldn't actually add anything more.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for the conversation, Teodor.
Thank you, Shawn. It was a pleasure.
Same here.